Stig Phelps. Oh, wait a minute. I'm Brent Leary.
Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players. I'm looking a little fuzzy.
Yeah, you are. Well, you've been doing so many damn shows, probably making you
I
fuzzy.
mean, look, my bandwidth looks like it's a little fuzzy,
No,
but
I
it's
actually got that. I was just sort of making fun of it.
oh,
I
but
can see that because I can see
yeah,
what you look like.
yeah.
Yeah, you have fuzzy bandwidth. That sounds
Fuzz,
like some sort of condition. Oh
it's
yes, I
like
was diagnosed with
fuzzy
fuzzy
Thurston.
bandwidth. Right? No, I was diagnosed with fuzzy bandwidth.
What do you mean, Sven?
Good dog.
Oh, I thought he
That's
was talking about somebody's dog.
no, I think that's a god dog. Right? That's somebody. I think that's Swedish.
Well, we need to find out because I'm thinking, you know,
Well, I
maybe
remember
it's
in
like your god dog.
well, you remember the producers, the movie or the play,
Zero
the musical?
Mustel.
Yeah. So the person who played, I forget what her name was, but the super sexy executive assistant person, she would go, "Good day, Verdog, Bialystock in bloom, Bialystock in bloom," right? And "Good day, Verdog" was Swedish in that movie, anyway. So I'm making the leap to this.
It's
Oh,
Norwegian.
Norwegian. Well, I got the right
You're in
region,
the
just
right
not the right.
vicinity.
Yeah. Okay.
Was Madeline
I
Kahn in that?
in the original, yeah, she was.
Okay.
Not in the movie though. Not in
Oh,
the
she wasn't in the movie.
remake. Not in
Oh.
the no, not yeah. She was in. I don't know. You know what? It's a good question because Gene
She was in so
Wilder.
many
Yeah,
of his movies.
I know.
Mel Blancs.
And I'm Mel Brooks.
Mel Blancs.
You said Mel.
I did
Back
say
to
Mel Blanc.
cartoons. You're going to
Like Bugs
cartoons.
Bunny.
Exactly. The cartoon, the voice of cartoons. Oh yeah, no, I know. Spend that much I did know. Thank you though. Norwegian, that was a good one. I'd be curious to what the Danish version of it was, or the uh, Finnish version, or something.
Wasn't there a commercial? It's like it's this word. It says it's Norwegian for something.
Yeah, it's like a cheese commercial or something, like a cheese whiz or something.
Yeah,
I
maybe
the
it was.
answer is yes. You're right. It was some crappy product, but it was funny with that Norwegian four thing. I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, well
Uh,
that's it for today.
good night and good luck.
That's right.
No,
And
we
to all
can't
the
end.
ships at sea.
We've got the second installment of one of my favorite shows,
That one.
Venerableness.
Yeah.
I should have had like an echo. So when I said venerable,
Yeah, but you know what? If you do that, then the venerable people just think they're having hearing issues.
yeah, we better
Comes
stick
with
with this
age.
venerableness.
Comes with
Yes,
age.
we do it once a quarter. Today is second quarter. We're gonna have. I like to call them, or should we wait? Should we say
Yeah,
who?
let's wait. Let's
Well, we'll
wait.
wait. All right.
Yeah, we should wait.
But one of the folks that will be joining us in a little bit was a part of the happy hour and led a really interesting discussion around notifications, newsletters, live audio, something
You
else.
know, did it ever occur to you though, and this does occasionally, that we think, wow, that was a great discussion around newsletters, notifications, and live audio, yet 99.9% of the world will think, you think that was a great discussion? Like that's a great subject for a discussion? Geez.
Hey,
Hey,
Larry,
Larry. Hey,
Larry, let's do it right now. We are
uh,
inviting you to be a guest
officially
on the show. What week do we have open?
right now, actually, interestingly enough, we have next week open because of a change in schedule. Larry, can you come on March 19th?
Or better yet,
March, no,
May 19th.
March 19th, 2028. We're open. Right? No, March. Can you
We're
come on
open.
May 19th?
Let us know. We'd love to have you next week if you're available. And if you're
Yeah,
not, we'll
absolutely.
figure it out.
Yes.
All right. Look what Sven is asking.
Right now, the tagline is unofficially. It's not official. I just stuck something in when I was updating a page. All it says is "We're funny." That's it.
Or at least we think we're funny.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's even a better tagline. We think we're
Yeah.
funny. I'm going to
But you
put
know
that.
what?
I'm going to fix it.
No tagline is as good as bringing CRM to its knees since
Knees and-
2009.
I know.
That's the best tagline ever.
I know. I know. But I think SAP owns that.
I don't know.
Well, it's their employee.
I don't think they want that as the
I know.
tag.
That's exactly why I said it. It just sounded so perfect.
We'll figure it out later, Larry.
Okay, you got a deal.
We'll definitely
got a
figure it
deal.
out. All right.
We'll after the show we'll contact you.
Was there anything other than newsletters, notifications, live audio?
There
There
was a
was something
fourth.
else he mentioned.
No, you're right, because I remember repeating 4 things multiple times,
Yeah.
and I don't.
One was
like
newsletter, one was
live
notification,
and
one was
live
live
audio.
audio. Damn it, if I can't remember the last one.
I can't either, even though I'm not kidding. I probably said all 4 of them on the happy hour 5 different times, but I don't remember now. I don't know, but it was kind of fascinating. Steve, of course, oops. I mean, that guy made a very good point, which we'll probably talk to him about again today.
By the way, I lost connection for like the last 20, 30 seconds. So I don't know what you just said.
Oh, I just ended.
Did you
the
see
show.
me there? Or did you see me
You were
leave?
fine. You were just you were quiet and moving around.
That's weird. Literally on both my machines, both started the little spinning wheel thing.
Wow.
But it's back.
People used
Dr.
to think
Strange.
I'm funny. Did they work for you?
Who
Oh
said
my God.
that? All right. First of all, Larry, great movie. Love that movie. The lines that I remember, scenes and lines. Maybe the most memorable scene for me is seeing my boy Slim Pickens riding the bomb down like
He didn't say
fucking
Dr.
up
Strange
Rocco.
Love, though. He said Dr. Strange, which might be the Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, I went right to Dr.
I know
Strange Love.
Well, so did I actually until I realized what he wrote. Right, but meta.
Okay, I like Dr. Strange too. It's a good one. I haven't seen the latest one though.
No, because I don't think it's available on anything but theaters at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm not going there right now. All right. So before we bring out our venerable folks, we do have a couple of announcements of things that are going to take place. I love this picture.
God, that is the scariest picture. Every time I see that. So
can you imagine playing chess against Alan Treffler?
I would not do it. I would not do it. Because if I lose, if I was winning, he'd kill me. Right? Look at that look.
That's what it looks like.
That is intense. Well, he's a former grandmaster, I think. Right?
Yeah,
like
I think
he was
so.
like a real grandmaster, like official,
like Grandmaster Flash.
Guy.
Maybe
yeah, right. Just like him. Exactly. You can tell. Just look at him.
He does look like he could get on the wheels of steel, though, and do some damage.
Yeah, except he doesn't look like Grandmaster Flash.
No,
not
really.
Not even in the slightest.
He will be joining us. Now, wait a minute. I guess I got to do something here because I'm going to say note the date and time, but it's kind of covered up by the logo there.
No, there it is.
So this is a special show. We call it On the Road to Pega World. This will be the second or third year in a row we're doing this.
Yeah,
I think at least 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So Alan Treffler, founder and CEO of Pega Systems, or we like to just say Pega. He will be joining us for a special hour next Tuesday, May 17th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Mark your calendars. It should be interesting. It's always interesting with Alan.
He's a talker. He's a good one.
He's a talker. When you said that, I thought, what does Anand Talker have to do with this?
Yeah. Well, he's a member of his family. That's what I meant. He's a talker. Like I'd say, my brother's a Greenberg. Same thing.
And that would be true too.
Yes, it would.
All right. Here's another one we need to start really talking about here. So you talk about it.
Yeah, this one's a biggie. So Verint has their annual Engage conference every year. This is the first one back in our IRL, so to speak, for I think 3 years. They have engaged us to do 3 episodes of CRM Playaz on premise, where we don't know who our guests are going to be. We don't even know what part of the exhibition hall or the conference room or the room in the back of the back of the hotel, rather, back of the bus, right? The back of the hotel. That's what I was said. I'm so used to saying back of the bus, right? A room in the back of the hotel. We may be doing it from, but what we do know is we're doing 3 episodes. We're doing them live. We will be live streaming them, according to them, and they will be a blast. And Brent and I, we've done a lot of these with other companies, and they are always amazing. And what we find out about the people we're interviewing is even more amazing. Of course, the best one was, what was Dean's last name again? I'm blocking it for some reason.
Oh, I don't know.
ServiceNow.
The goat herder?
Yeah. Dean, I'm sorry, Dean. I don't mean to block your name. I literally just watched you a few weeks ago on a different vendor's conference. But Dean, who runs he runs actually help desk, really, and customer service, runs the actual customer service for ServiceNow, turns out to be a goat herder, in addition to a former Marine. He's a former Marine, a goat herder, and now he's a goat herder, but he has a favorite goat named Julie, who he showed us a picture of as we did it live. We expect to have other incredibly scintillating facts like that during these 3 episodes.
I was really hoping, though,
goat herder.
I was really hoping the goat's name was going to be Billy.
No, God, that would be so pedestrian. I mean, the only person who should call anything Billy Goat is the ones who own that restaurant in Chicago, Billy Goat's, which was famous for so many political scandals, but it's also the hangout. Not only Mayor Daley used to eat at
Joe's.
No, he used to eat at this breakfast place I used to go to. Lou, it was called Lou Mitchell's, which is actually the best breakfast place I think.
Was it named after somebody?
Yeah, Lou. He used to come around when I was going there. He was alive still. He was this old Greek guy, and he had this big Greek toast. And the breakfast was off the charts, great. So that was Mayor Daley's big hangout. But the rest of the political spectrum in Chicago ate at Billy Goat's, and it actually the Cubs but it was also where all the sports writers ate, and the players from the Cubs and the White Sox would eat. And the old Curse of the Cubs thing that was on for years, the Bartman thing,
the goat.
That was cause of Billy Goat's, because there was
now it makes sense. Okay,
a player insulted someone at Billy Goat's bar and restaurant, and they pronounced the curse of Billy Goat on him, and they didn't win a World Series ever again.
Was that before 1945?
Yeah, I think it was actually. No, it's after 45 because they won in 45.
They won in 40? No.
I think they wait.
No, they had. Remember, before they won in, what is it, 2003 or something? They hadn't won since 1908.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It was, but I don't think it was before 45, because Billy Goats wasn't around in like 1909 or anything. But it was. I know Mike Royko was one of the iconic sports writers of the era. Used to eat there like every day, and I actually saw him 2 or 3 times down there when I would go eat there. It was pretty cool place.
Where is it? The Cubs that had the black cat run across the infield?
Yes.
It was them.
No, wait. Wasn't that, I thought that was the Mets.
Maybe it was the Mets. Well, speaking of the Mets, Alan would know. Alan, did the black cat run across the Mets infield? And yes, thank you for verifying me being right.
Yes.
1908.
Right. Who won at 45? Cardinals?
They played the Cubs. The Cubs made it to the
Maybe it was
World
the
Series.
Yankees.
Maybe it
Who
was the
knows?
Yankees.
Well, the
I
good
don't
default, the good default answer, of course, is always the Yankees.
know. Well, in the 40s and 50s, yes.
Of 60s, part of the 60s too.
The early part.
Okay, it was the Tigers.
The
It was
Tigers.
the Tigers. Yeah,
All
Detroit Tigers. I just looked it up.
All right.
That was important. I'm glad we got that out of the way. So that's what we'll be doing at Varen.
Yeah, we'll be talking about baseball courses,
Right.
You know, but I
Curse
do. By the way, just want to say a quick hello. I see our venerable guests are in the green room. They're both there. We will be with you in a minute or so. So thanks for showing up, and have any of the croissants or whatever's in the green room. I don't think we have anything left.
No, I think we're out of Brookies.
We're out of Brookies. So.
It was the Mets. Yeah, 69.
Yeah, it was the Mets. Oh, that was the year they won the World Series?
Yeah, yep.
So that was a good sign then. All right.
I guess. Did not know that. Cubs. Yes, that I do. That's right.
Wait a minute. Was Harry Carey, he was still alive in 2003?
No, that must have been, was it Skip Carey? Hold on a minute. Hold on.
I don't know.
Hold on. This is throwing all kinds of
I know.
shade now.
It's starting to, work against our schedule here. So we got to get this wrapped up.
Let me just tell you this much, and then we can move on.
All right.
Harry Carey died in 98.
Oh, yeah. So it wasn't him making the call.
No, maybe it was Skip Carey.
Was it 98? So Harry Carey was around for Sammy Sosa then.
That was the year he died.
Yeah. So, all right. I don't know.
So who knows how alert he was when Sosa was doing what he was doing.
No. All right. I think it's come to the time where the Venerable Paul Greenberg gets to introduce the Venerable panel of experts.
All right. Well,
people who have been there, done it all. Here we go.
We'll start with the VIR, our Venerable in Residence, which is
we got to call him. He's the Paul Lynde of Venerableness. I don't know if you'll like that or not, but we shall find out shortly.
Well, for the moment, we'll call him PLVIR.
Right. What does that stand for?
Paul Lynde of Venerableness in Residence.
God.
Right. PLVIR. That would be Mr. Steve Gillmor. And for those, I'm sure you all know who he is at this point, aside from the fact he is running to this day one of the longest, most successful podcast turned broadcasts in history, literally in history, meaning it was the second podcast in the history of podcasts, the Gilmore Gang. He also right now is helping Salesforce develop its media strategy. He has a history in the world of comedy and rock and roll with a lot of the major players throughout his life for producing, directing, and when I say directing, I don't mean necessarily just being a movie director, but also literally directing the strategies that these guys would use to, get themselves out there and get their name known. This guy is he's a rock star and an icon, actually. Just to give you an example.
You didn't mention the Firesign Theater?
I'm going to get there. Don't worry. He's also, I got to tell you, for the Frank Radis, who was on the show once and is on one of the Gilmore Gang members, when we mentioned Steve to him, at one point we mentioned Steve on the show, Frank Radis called him a legend, right? Which he is.
When Frank calls you a legend, you're a legend.
Frank's won 6 Emmys, nominated for a trillion more.
The number seems to get inflated every time we talk about it.
It's all right. Next time we go to quadrillion on the number. But so the other side of it is that with Steve, he's also that person having that discussion with us yesterday, which I inadvertently slipped and said Steve earlier, was him. That we were talking about. Steve is also the master of notifications and has actually understood where they're going in importance. Look, he's let's say he's venerable, meaning he's if I'm venerable, floor level. Dennis, the next guest is minus. Steve's +1, right? So he's a year older than me,
Wow.
right?
I didn't know there were levels to that, but
well, there's age levels. So this man, he is a true star and a true thinker, and is very attuned to the world and continuing to attune to the world as it's moving, not just where it is. So that would be our PLBIR, Steve Gillmor.
Are we on yet?
Yeah, you're on. No, we haven't started the broadcast yet.
Just
I've gotten
imagine
a lot
this.
older in that introduction.
Yeah,
I know.
just imagine you're
that
the one.
was counting hours.
But wait a minute, you're the one that has been on the show before and has been introduced before. What's going to happen now?
Oh no, this one's going to be a.
We're going to find out about Howlett. That's going to be exciting.
Oh, you just said it.
You just gave it away, man.
Gave it away.
Oh yeah.
All right.
All right.
So now this one is, I have to say, an incredible pleasure to see this man. This is a man. Well, look, we've already mentioned his name, both first and last, in two separate ones. So this is Dennis Howlett. For those of you who don't know him, first, shame on you. You should. Secondly, yeah, I mean, Shonda. Okay, I'm going full Jewish shame here. Right?
I'm glad
you
that
should
you
know Dennis
pointed
Howlett.
that out, because I didn't know.
Right.
I thought you were talking about Shonda
That's
Rhimes.
full. No, this is full Jewish shaming. Right. So Dennis, until he retired last year, and actually even continuing into retirement, which is what makes this even more interesting, was one of the biggest influencers in the enterprise technology world. He frightened he frightened them to death at one level, and at another level, even after the fear washed over them, they saw the truth of what he was saying at the same time. The thing with Dennis is his insights are profound. His knowledge of the varying vendors who are in the space was extraordinary. He didn't just leave it to himself to do this. He then went out and created what is now a very influential and incredibly well done property called Diginomico, which talks to all these things going on in the enterprise tech world in the kind of depth you just wish most analysts could even vaguely understand, but nowhere near do they, and I include myself in that they. He's on the surface, you might have scared people, but he's actually a fundamentally kind of a teddy bear. He's a truly nice person with a lot of heart, and he's out there to help people, and he always was and will be. And now that he's retired, he's become a master of, he's always been an expert in these areas. Now he's a real master of two things which fascinate the hell out of me. He builds these scale model tanks, and he's become an amazing chef, even though I have to say that's visually, for me, I haven't eaten a thing he's ever cooked, but visually what he's doing is remarkable. So we have the pleasure of, I don't know how to exactly put this, bringing him out of retirement for a day. Oh, one last thing. And even though he's retired, he's now producing a newsletter called Suxless, Suxless, which of course, take it for its obvious meaning. And
no, again, what does that mean?
It means he's just misspelling the word success. Just that's for
okay.
PG audience, right?
All right.
Right.
The UK spelling.
Right, exactly. It's like OU in color, So Dennis,
can I bring him on now?
Yeah,
wait. Come on.
Well, let me make my. There he is, the man. So what is
that?
Oh, that's his studio. Oh crap! Wow, that's where you're building all the tanks.
Yeah. Let me just get this off. This is so I'm going blind, so I can't see. So I need magnifiers.
Oh my! Are you? So let me ask you: are we bringing you out of retirement for a day, or are you just sort of continuing in retirement for this?
Well, I'm retired. That's it, right? So, but I mean, you can ask me anything you want. I don't care anymore.
No,
Wait a minute. Is that
You
any
didn't care
different from
before.
when you were actually
No.
working?
Not at all. Not at all. Who couldn't ask you anything they wanted prior to your retirement? So you really never retired, is what you're trying to say.
No. I always said, you could ask me anything you want. You might not like the answer, but and sometimes what I do is I qualify that by saying, if you ask me that again, I'll tell you, just to give you a hint that you might not get it or might not like it, right? And very often they'd say, "Oh yeah," and then I'd nail them or whatever.
Let me ask you: when you gave them that choice, did they sometimes rescind the question so that you didn't have to react? Okay, I thought that might have been.
Yeah. So, especially those that have been there before.
Well,
That's
first
the thing.
off, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, thank you. No worries.
So let me ask you. This is something I'm curious about. So, and this goes to your newsletter, really. If I'm looking at your newsletter, which I do, I get it. What you typically, Esteban, we're sorry. You were at Sapphire, man.
Invite.
He was at Sapphire. He just got home, I think.
Thought he was busy.
I think he's home now. You're actually covering areas that you historically hadn't covered, more general economic topics or, global issues that were not particularly only enterprise technology related or focused on it. What's kind of brought you to that point that you decided to take it there?
Well, it's good to have Steve on here because I think he'll probably understand this to a degree, and that is that I've always been a student of history. It was something I really enjoyed, and when we were at what you would call high school, it ended for me at 1914. So we never got past 1914, and I suspect that the reason for that is that because our senior teachers were World War II veterans very often, and they didn't want to talk about it, right? But I've always been a student of history, and I think it's important to study history. And somebody once said to me that, as it relates to the enterprise game, for example, you've been around since blah 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 blah, and so you kind of go back to ticker tape and all that crap. So you kind of seen it all, and it kind of helps you to contextualize, and that's true, right? But I think Steve will understand this a little bit because back in 2007, 2008, when Obama was about to get elected. I don't know if Steve will remember this, but we had one or two podcast sessions where Steve was convinced that Obama would be the great savior for the country. And I said, I don't think so. You've got to look at who's paying the bills, right? And I had arguments with him at the time saying, listen, he's going to have to pay these people and it's going to be KPMG, Goldman Sachs, blah, 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 blah. And for all the reasons that were there at the time, I completely understood where he was coming from. But I'd seen that game before. That's where history matters, right? And so, there's a school of thought that says that if you're in an enterprise game, keep out of politics. And my view is this: it doesn't matter what you're in; it's political. End of. The question is the extent to which you want to dive into that mosh pit, right? And what I'm concerned about at the moment is that we are living through what I consider to be an incredibly dangerous period of time, right? I mean, I sit right in the middle of the blast zone if Vladimir goes crazy and hits the big red button, which is okay because I won't know anything about it and that's fine. But at the same time, I think we're at a point where we have an opportunity, a real opportunity to help people who are less fortunate than ourselves, okay? And we're losing it. I mean, to me, the pandemic provided an enormous opportunity to reset, right? Entire industries completely shut down. What are you going to do about, how are you going to rethink all this stuff and pass by what happened? Nada, zippo, almost nothing changed, right? And we're sat in the middle of this current period where I think there are similar opportunities, and I fear that nothing will change. And I see it in my own government, where they're really spouting the absolutely failed Milton Friedman argument about what you do about interest rates and money and all the rest of it, and they can't think of anything else. And you know, I don't have a political axe to grind per se. You can't say to me, oh, you're left, you're right, you're center, you're this or that or the other. I'm a freaking pragmatist. I want to see things happen and get done. And there's no new thinking. And so I'm just asking those questions. That's all I'm really doing. Because I won't pretend to have answers. I've talked to a number of people who I respect, who have looked at these things over a long period of time, and asked them, you know, what do you do in these circumstances, and so on and so forth, and try to make sense of it. And so those are the kinds of things that I talk about, right? You know, I mean, we had what you would call a House of Representatives guy spouting off today. I mean, talk about a dickwad. I mean, he was saying, you know, we have generations of people who can't cook, won't cook, and you can do a meal for like 30 pence, 50 cents, right? I mean, what? Okay, it's a family show, right? What freaking planet is this guy on? I mean, I do this stuff every day, and there's no way on earth that I could put a meal together for 30 pence, 50 cents. I just couldn't. And, you know, unless I want to go down and find a freaking food bank that's going to give it to me for nothing, you know? I mean, you get that kind of crap coming across, you know, and it just makes me angry because I live in a rainbow family, you know, that I have Muslims in my family. I have very poor people in my family. I have very sick people in my family who are in large measure dependent upon a relatively low income job and or a degree of state support, which I don't really want. I mean, nobody wants bloody state support, not in this country anyway, not really. And it's a struggle. And I financially support about 5 members of my family because I have to. And I want to as well, of course. So, you know, these things make me angry. And but they make me angry in a purposeful way. Whereas, you know, by the time I came to the end of it in the whole enterprise thing, I was getting angry because I was pissed off. I'd had enough, you know. It's like, you know. Anyway, so there you go. And by the way, success doesn't mean success. It means
I know. I was joking.
I want to suck. I have this thing on the wall that says, that's the name of my company, Success, right? To suck less every day, if possible.
No, I got it. I honestly did get. I remember when you literally described that years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So I got it. I was just making a joke.
So yeah, it's fine. And but I believe in it. I believe that, you know, what we should do as human beings is try and suck less every day, if we can. And, you know, very often we fail, but that's okay. And as long as we forgive ourselves and move on, you know, end of. So, but I do it when the mood takes me. I do it when I think there's something important to say that, you know, the 3 people who read it or wherever many it is that read it are interested. That's all. It's purely for me at the end of the day.
So
And just to remind myself that I can string a sentence together in prose. Because the other day I couldn't get a bloody Zoom meeting going. I've forgotten.
your writing is still really good. That I can tell you for sure.
Okay.
So okay, let's take this to a different level of it, which is so Dennis is producing a newsletter, really, you know, and I guess it's, you know, it's whenever, and Steve, you're producing one via Substack. And yesterday on our happy hour, of course, we had that.
What's it called again?
The even more joyous hour.
Yeah,
Each year we elevate the level. First year was a happy hour. Second year was a happier hour. And the third year is an even more joyous hour. I have no clue what we're going to do next year.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get to levels that I can't even consider yet. But we were talking about the concepts of, what was it? It was newsletters. It was live audio. It was notifications. And there was what was the fourth?
What was the fourth one?
There was
Don't
a
ask
fourth
me.
one. Yeah, you were the one who gave it to us.
I knew
Yeah.
that was coming.
I think we
There
all
were 4
said
of them. But I kind of want to go to because actually the newsletter specifically for a moment, because it's fascinating. Because, you know, look, I go back years,
Metaverse. It was the metaverse.
I thought we just have to say that every hour or two.
Yeah,
Right,
I'll
so,
just chime in out of the blue and just say
Metaverse,
metaverse,
the word
and then go
metaverse,
back to silence.
right? I go back years. I remember when social media was getting big. I was talking to what was that, Brent? You'll know that guy. The guy, Chris, the guy wearing around the military jacket and Radiant 6, the camouflage.
Rogan.
Chris Brogan, right? And this is a long time ago, and he's like an early social media name. I know that, Sven. I'm aware. I'm semi-retired. So, and I remember asking him at one point, what do you want? You're like, what would be your dream? And he said, I want to write a book that someone publishes. And I've talked to a lot of these social social influencers and advocates, and they all typically ultimately want to write a physical book that gets published. Okay, that's number one. Number two, as part of the media strategy of Pega Systems, they produced a printed magazine, right? Printed magazine. Again, we're talking about physical print. All right. Early newsletters, of course, were always printed because we didn't have the internet to do anything with them. I used to produce them a long, long time ago. But now, of course, we're talking about newsletters that we can produce, on demand, basically. And at the same time, it's not we're talking about moving away from things like white papers and those kind of things. Nobody really, they may download them, but they don't read them. Right. So why is that format palatable, interesting, useful? What's the real benefit of the format itself? I love them, but look, my degree is in editorial journalism, so figure it out. Right. So, but what's the value of this? Why a newsletter?
Well, it's what's the value of a blog?
Same question.
Okay. Dennis, what do you think?
Well, it's the attention economy, isn't it, Steve? We used to talk about this all the time, right? If you can grab people's attention and give them something that they need, then you've created value. And the beauty of the digital version is that it's free, right? It's free to produce, it's free to distribute, as near as damn it anyway. And it's free to consume in large measure, unless, of course, you're in a subs mode.
Sorry?
It's
unless,
free.
Of course, you're going to, I couldn't hear the last word.
Oh, sorry, paid subscription. Unless you're going to a paid subscription model, and then you've got a thing to deal with that.
So, yeah, I agree with what you just said. And I see newsletters as just the current format of what started as a blog and moved into podcasting, and now is being absorbed or attempting to be absorbed by the mainstream media.
So
in a very cack-handed fashion, I have to say.
Okay, well, if that's the case, so let me ask you this question, both of you guys, really, because I'm really curious. So, if we assume it's yet another form of content distribution, that is, the mainstream media is looking to now either adopt or adapt to, and the question is, really, is there value in the mainstream media doing that? Because, ultimately, the mainstream media, the reason they're called mainstream is they have a lot of impact. And even if they are somewhat traditional in their formats have impacted all of us since we were kids. And that's number one. Number two is a lot of them are trying to figure out what to do about the fact that we're moving into basically a millennial dominated world, right? And they consume differently than the mainstream media is used to. So they're trying to figure out, how do we continue that? There was an article that I saw today on, for some reason they were calling Apple and Amazon Prime mainstream media. And this article was a little strange, but NBC Universal was the more interesting one that they mentioned. And even them, they were early on trying to figure out what to do about the internet, period. That's why it's NBC Universal. So is that a bad thing? I mean, I don't find it bad that they're attempting to figure out how to do it, because their ability to get content to people is vast. there's a lot of models that suck to death. I mean, that are horrible and need to be changed. There's a lot of thinking that needs to be changed, but there's also a lot of attempts to change too. So how do we look at that? How are we supposed to look at all that?
I'm quite happy to dive in on this if you want me to.
Take it away.
Well, for me, the bulk of conversation that I hear, at least, and I tend to listen to American stuff rather than British stuff, funny enough, is that they're trapped. They're trapped, at least in my opinion, in an ad-driven model, right? And that's suicide. I mean, it's kamikaze style, as far as I'm concerned, right? I mean, I can remember when we were doing Diginomico, customers would come to us and they would say, well, what about advertising? You know, talk to Facebook, talk to Google, forget everybody else pretty much, right? They've done it. And guess what? They're digital. You know? Okay, some people read the Wall Street Journal. Some people read the Washington Post. You know, are they making a decision based on those things? No, they're not. You know, I mean, one thing I know from my time in doing all this, I mean, you described me as an influencer, and I kind of get embarrassed about that, because one thing I absolutely know is that in any enterprise application decision, I'm one of hundreds of points of contact. And, you know, something I say may have an impact, yeah, but it isn't going to be the thing that makes the decision by any stretch of the imagination. But advertising sits at the bottom of all this, in my opinion. And that's where I think they have the difficulty. They just can't get past that mindset. And yeah, it's been tough for them.
So, Steve, what's the model that they need then?
Well, you asked the question before about whether that was a good idea for the mainstream media to adopt these new technologies. And I think to Dennis's point, the mainstream media is so poisoned by the business model that they've been left with, you know, 24/7 news, you know,
breaking news. Everything's breaking news.
Exactly. It's I've gone from being angry about what Trump says to being angry about what the people that are talking about Trump say. You know, so one of the people that was on your you're welcome, Dennis, by the way.
Steve, you may enjoy this, but just to digress very slightly. I was living in San Diego the day that Trump got elected, right? And I was prior to that, I was in San Diego when we did Brexit. And I phoned up and I said to one of my colleagues, I said, I think the UK just failed its collective IQ test, right? And he said, yeah, I agree. And then when Trump got elected, I talked to him and said, yeah, the US just followed suit. And by the way, I'm out. And by the way, I'm out of here. And I knew that there was no way on earth that I could ever live in the US under President Trump, and I was gone within a couple of months.
I remember.
Anyway, that's just an aside, but
go ahead.
So the answer to your question, Paul, I think is that whatever is going on now, to steal Dennis's newsletter name, what we have to do now is to suck less, because you know the mainstream media sucks big time, and you know, and the newsletter economy, if you will, is an example of a flight to on the part of writers and producers in the latest incarnation of some of these newsletters that are going to make the same mistakes that their so-called mainstream brethren have made all along, and sisterhood, by the way. And it what's going to come out of that, I don't know, but it's going to be better than what goes into it. So I think that there's the value of blogs to me was not what it did or even what it was going to do, but just the opportunity to find out.
Can I point out one example, or maybe the biggest example of how I guess the mainstream failed miserably at trying to catch up. I'll just say CNN Plus. Why do you think that was such a miserable failure that they pronounced it one day and 2 days later they pronounced they were done with it? They're walking away with it.
Well, I think it was the first shot fired in what we're seeing now with Elon Musk and the Twitter takeover. What he is saying about it, whether we believe it or not, to Dennis's earlier point, is he's talking about moving from a advertising-based model to at least some degree of subscription-based creation of content. What do you think? I mean, you guys are sitting here on what I consider to be the next generation of the analyst business. You're broadcasting one to many. Dennis, co-founded or founded an incredible website that continues to retain authority in the enterprise space. Who else are you or are they competing with? So much of this is already in play and is being worked out.
Well, CNN Plus failed because the amount of money that it spent, it was like taking a hatchet to a gunfight, right? Literally, it spent $300 million that it didn't have, right? Or rather, that was in question right in the middle of a takeover. The people that were taking them over basically said, "Hey, hang on a minute. Can you just hang fire while we get this merger done before you make a final decision?" And CNN Plus basically said, "Fuck you." And so guess what the acquirers said? They said, "Well, hi guys, fuck you too." And that's it. The economics certainly played into it, but ego played into it hugely. So that, I mean, to my mind, that's a simple answer, which may have something to do with Elon Musk. Let's talk about Elon and his ego.
Well, I don't bring it up, the Twitter situation, except as a strong indication of, people when they write for, pleasure or for passion. I mean, that's what blogs were. They're not going to do that if they feel that the entire environment is directionless. They're going to do it because they think there's an aspiration behind what they have to say, that it's going to reach maybe not a broadcast model, but it's going to reach a narrowcast audience, which is where the influencer discussion starts. So,
Steve, you were always a huge fan of Twitter, if memory serves.
Correct.
And I was certainly, I came off Twitter, by the way, a couple of years ago because for me it got too toxic and I'd had enough. I was fed up with being angry all the time. Every time I read something, it's like, this is not a good way to lead your life. Anyway, I always felt that Twitter should be a subscription product, because for myself, it felt that if you could push people into that direction, then first of all, you're going to foster a better quality of product. You're going to foster a better quality of content, yeah. And hopefully you'll keep the crazies away. And of course, they never did it. They were pushed, I'm certain, down the ad-supported route, because that's where everybody was going, wasn't it? And just couldn't find a way back. Now, what Elon does with this, assuming that he gets it, is completely open to question. But I'll tell you what, I ain't coming back to it anytime soon. Definitely not.
Well, just to round out the point, the Substack model. Substack is one of, at the moment, two major vendors involved in newsletters. The other is, ironically, Twitter. And Substack's figured out a way of being able to incentivize mainstream media writers to move to a newsletter model and get enough revenue out of that to be able to survive. But what it also engenders, at least from my perspective, is this kind of open landscape for it's very reminiscent. I go back quite a while, maybe a little bit longer than Paul, and I don't know how old you are, Dennis, but we're all in the same ballpark. So I go back to the 60s.
Steve, I'm 1 year younger than you.
Yeah, you already made that point.
1 year.
Status. But, the 60s were coincident with the birth, at least in the United States, of FM radio, which brought about this ability to be able to, take over not just the music and the functions of news radio, and et cetera, but also this kind of comprehensive aesthetic that we started to see played out with, the British invasion, the Beatles, et cetera, which was they took over essentially the publishing part of the business that they were in. They took over the songwriting. They took over the graphics. They took over. And so I see a comparison or a parallel between that moment and all of what it generated and the newsletter moment. It's a similar phenomenon where there's this, Substack has this iOS app where, as we were talking about on the happy hour yesterday, one of your happiest hour people was, I don't remember her name, but she was a CMO, and she was talking about how difficult
Jody.
Right. How difficult it was for, they were trying to understand essentially what's going on with email and how there are certain indications that IT at corporations are blocking newsletters. Now, that's interesting to me, but what's more interesting to me is that there are multiple channels now, the whole concept of omnichannel. And Substack is moving from email centric, which they will continue to support. Salesforce bought a company called ExactTarget, which is when I think about the time that I met you, Paul. Mm-hmm. And so email is not going away, but notifications and the ability to be able to re-architect how we consume information is moving toward this thing called the social graph, which is what I think Elon Musk is trying to buy, is a social graph which is based more on influence than it is on eyeballs. So there's a lot going on in this space, and I'm sure we're going to hear from Dennis why I don't know what I'm talking about, but
yeah, we saw that smile too.
Exactly.
I only smiled, Steve, because you mentioned an expression I haven't heard you use for a long time, and that's social graph.
Well, I think that's what he's trying to buy.
Yeah.
What else is Twitter good for? Most people think it's not good for anything.
Let me take this. I know we're kind of short on time, but let me take this sort of in the same direction, but a different question, because this is something that constantly fascinates me. And it kind of goes to what I said about Chris Brogan and getting a physical book published. So we're dealing now with what's pretty clearly generational change and changeover for, in business and actually just in leadership globally. Millennials, are the largest part of the workforce. They're moving into, senior executive positions at major companies. They're, obviously moving into, houses of representatives and parliaments and things like that across the world in leadership positions, et cetera, et cetera. And over time, though, I keep finding some very interesting, characteristics get repeated by. It happened with baby boomers, happened with Gen X, it happened with millennials, and it's happening with Gen Z, which is they grew up with a lot of very, let's say, traditional triggers and signals. So, for example, if you think about, and this is just an easy example, but if you think about YouTube in its formation, everybody was fascinated by the idea that they could be seen. And everyone was uploading videos, and it didn't matter what they looked like at all. I mean, it's just the fact that they could upload a video and people would know it's them, and so on and so forth in the very early days of YouTube. Now, no one will even watch a YouTube video unless the production values are extremely high. But these are production values that were shaped by them watching television, right? And going to movies, right? Meaning in every traditional thing you did as a child, we did what they did too when they were kids. That goes to millennials and Gen Zers also. So they're looking at production values that were literally, let's say, became those signals because they grew up with them by doing the things that were traditional. You constantly find traditional signals being underlying a lot of new business models, new approaches to content creation, and et cetera, et cetera. And while there's plenty of brand new approaches in those, but the signals are the same signals that have always triggered them. Like when you see something now and you watch, let's say you're online and you're watching an event, if the production values are low or the engagement is minimal, meaning hello from Singapore, hello from blah, 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 the engagement is minimal, you get bored, you tune out, right? You don't want to, and you don't keep watching it. Even if the content is actually okay, it doesn't matter, right? If it's 480p or 240p or whatever, and the sound is choppy, your distractions are thrown in there. And at the same time, you won't even watch it, even if it wasn't distracted, it was just low quality, right? Low grade. So how do you, on the one hand, we're talking about positing all kinds of new models, different kinds of approaches to monetization, as we'll announce more publicly or more specifically in July. Brent and I are launching that digital broadcasting network. I mean, we're doing all these things that are new, but here's a perfect example. One of the things we're doing with the digital broadcasting network is launching a show which will be focused on it's ultimately focused on our universe plus, right? It's basically the business technology world plus the edges of a larger audience. But what's one of the formats we're testing? A late night talk show, as opposed to a talking head show, which is what we see nonstop. And that's become the tradition in our universe with the podcast and everything else. They're talking head shows. I have a podcast I'm going to launch called Talking Headless, right? And that's going to be modestly traditional, but a late night talk show is absolutely traditional when it comes to standard television. But at the same time, when it comes to our universe, it's not in the slightest. Nobody's ever done anything like it. So how do you deal with that mindset, that behavior, that signal triggering that is traditional in the context of all these alternate and new models? And I'm asking because I don't know the answer.
You give people value. End of. That's as simple as that, right? I mean, I do subscribe to a few podcasts. I do subscribe to a few newsletters. I try to keep the volume down because otherwise I never get through to it, right? But what I'm looking for is deep, thoughtful, insightful stuff. That's what I want, right? Inevitably, that's long form. Inevitably, when people tell me, oh, if I can't get it in the first paragraph, then I'm gone. It's like, well, you don't want to get it then.
Right.
Nobody who's doing anything insightful and meaningful does it in a paragraph. Not as far as I know.
I agree.
Well,
you actually show that your now grown up child Diginomico is long form, and it's really
it always has been long form.
Right, exactly.
I said I remember saying very early on that I don't care how much you write, as long as, first of all, it's insightful, et cetera, all the things we just discussed. And oh, by the way, don't restrict it to 500 or 600 words, because I don't believe that you can write anything insightful in that. Well, you can, but you're in a completely different situation there, where you need a lot of editorial support in order to do that. And nowadays you can't get it. Not if you want to keep the hamster wheel rolling. At least not as far as I can tell, anyway. Steve may know better.
You're certainly right about that. There's, in addition to your comment about overall value, there's also another value that I think is emerging in this space, which is replacement value. There's a newsletter by a woman named Heather Cox Richardson. And she's a professor at some university in the States. And the basic content of her writing is it's sort of an analysis of the current political situation, but it's annotated with a deep-rooted historical perspective, going back to the Civil War and in some cases. And it's fascinating. It's not something that I would have thought I'd be interested in, but it's not something that I can kind of disregard at this point. But it also replaces endless audio muted, peering over, what's behind me there. Well, thank God the TV's off at the moment, of what's going on in cable news. You get, at the end of the day, when she writes, you can read through it and you get a very sophisticated analysis of all the stuff that it takes the talking heads, to your point, Paul, hours and hours and futile access to an audience that doesn't care anyway. And it puts it in something that takes you 10 minutes or 5 minutes to read. And it's a replacement for a lot of noise. And those things are going to be successful, whether they're taken over by the mainstream media or not. They're going to be successful.
I think you have to train people that instant gratification is not something that you can have if you want to have insight, right? I've heard so much over the years of people saying, "Oh, you got to get it in it's got to be like the 3-minute record. You get the whole thing in 3 minutes." Yeah, we're not singing songs. We're telling stories. It's a different thing.
Yes.
And that's how I view the world anyway. And I have done for a long time.
Well, we're sort of at wrap up, but I do have one question. This is for you, Dennis, specifically, which is actually completely off topic, which is your scale model building.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little? I'm fascinated by what you're doing. And if you have an example anywhere around, you can even show people, because it's fantastic. You got to see the quality.
I'm in the middle of building this thing, which is almost a mythical thing. It's called a KV-2. It's a Soviet tank that was built to never really saw much service because it was useless. And I'm building this, which is a T-34-76.
Wow.
The T-34's that was one of the most successful tanks ever, and it's hilariously funny in today's context because it was built to be expendable. Okay, the Russians had the idea that volume trumps everything, and we're going to build them to be expendable. But it was built to combat this thing. This is a very small version of it. This is called a Tiger 1, Tiger 2. They were the most powerful tanks ever built by the Germans. But of course, being German, guess what? It was like ordering your Mercedes today. You can have any color you want. You can have this. So they couldn't build the bloody things. First of all, secondly, and contrary to sort of German engineering, no, they weren't reliable. Okay, but these things were incredibly reliable, and so they weren't as powerful, but they managed to beat the crap out of the Germans. So when you think about what's happening today in Ukraine, that piddling little army with not a great deal has been able to smash the T-72s and their new stuff. And Russia dent, but it's T-14, its supposedly most advanced machine, into service, because they don't know if it would survive against this Ukrainian army. Yeah, So, I mean, this is where all this historical stuff comes into. It's like people ask me about the whole Ukrainian war thing, and it was like it was lost before it was even started, because the guy is behaving exactly the same as the German leadership did in 1939. It's exactly the same. The parallels are just. You only have to read the history to understand. The parallels are totally there, and it's going to be bloody, obviously, but you can't avoid that. But it's so, and it's weird because I didn't sort of start this 5 minutes ago. I mean, I've been doing it for a few years, so having that historical context has been incredibly useful, at least from my perspective, and I love doing it. The other thing is that a lot of people in my family are quite artistic, and I'm not intrinsically, I don't have a talent for literally painting or making things or what have you. I mean, to me, a nail is something I hit as I'm hammering my thumb. But building these things allows me to engage in a degree of creativity that satisfies me. Let's put it that way. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. I'm happy with it. And it's to Steve's point about, which he hasn't mentioned, but I'm sure he would love to, community. It's a wonderful, lovely community. Anybody steps out of line, bang, they get kicked. There's no messing about, right? And everybody's really helpful. And there are some amazing world-class builders. And by that I mean it's like, crikey, if I ever got close to what they can do, I'd be delighted. But
you're pretty damn good, man.
I'm not. I can point you to some guys. You look at their stuff and you go, "What?" I mean, some of these guys are just amazing, and they teach you. They teach you shit. There's a guy in Serbia that I talk to a lot, and I'll say to him, Martin, I said, I'm really not quite understanding how to do this. And he said, oh yeah, well, what you do is do. And oh, by the way, I've got a video over here that shows you some of these techniques. Give it a go and let me know how you get on, right?
Wow.
There are loads of these people around, and it's so different from most of the crap that you and I would otherwise be used to, where people are basically dick waving half the time, Well,
there's a guy. There's a guy I don't think you ever met him, but named Chris Buchholz.
Yeah, I know Chris Buchholz.
Oh, well, Chris is an expert modeler also, but he builds planes mostly. Like, he's not only an expert, he's actually written books on P-38, and he's actually been an advisor to DreamWorks on some of their movies on.
Oh wow!
Now Chris he's a heavyweight, and his model he once gave me a gift of a model World War I plane, because those are the ones that interest me. Well, I have it in the other room, but it's magnificent, really. I mean, he and you should have a conversation sometime, even though I know you're building entirely different things, but you're both building things related to varying wars. And I know you built World War I model tanks too.
Yeah, that's right. The reason that I do those, just to be clear, is because my eyesight is not good enough to build small scale aircraft. It's as simple as that. I just can't see what I'm doing. And I don't have. Listen, we're all getting a bit old, aren't we? And so I build what I can build. It's no more complicated.
Well, I am genuinely impressed. As we close, I just am genuinely impressed.
Yeah, but listen, Paul. I mean, I got all the time in the world, right? No deadlines for me. Thank you.
Yeah, give me a year or two. That'll be good. All right. Well, Brent, it's your time. Brent always lets us old people talk when we do it.
You guys are doing a really great job.
He calls it venerable. He calls us venerables, but I'm trying to explain that just means worthy of being praised, not being praised.
What
We're not venerated.
No,
we're not venerated.
What just took place? That is what venerableness is all about. I have nothing to add, although Sven wrote a paragraph. I don't think we have enough time to even try to go into a lot of that. But the first thing he says, we shouldn't talk about the medium, which is transporting content. Who was the person who said the medium was the message? I can't remember who it was.
Buckminster Fuller.
Wrong. Marshall McLuhan.
Marshall McLuhan. You're right.
Oh,
Steve's right.
so
What was the name of the book?
I don't know, but
The medium
tend
is
to-
the message.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what
Oh,
I
that's the
thought.
name of the book.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So maybe Sven, that might be something for you to check out, because I don't think you can completely just discount, the medium.
No, it's actually medium is the massage. That's what somebody's that can't.
I don't know. I didn't see that book. I don't think I would
No,
have.
actually,
read that
that's
one.
what it is. I'm just looking at Wikipedia, and it actually says it's the medium is the massage. It doesn't make any sense. To me, but
I
I'm
didn't get to that level of book for. Anyway,
Paul, just before we go, one thing that I do nowadays as a discipline more than anything else is I try to read stuff with which I know I'm going to disagree, right? Because for a variety of reasons. And one of them is it's to help me think. I think it's, if I listen to myself all day long, of course I'm going to agree, right? But if I can find stuff with which I disagree, then I can start to think, well, what is this person saying that makes me feel uncomfortable? Or why is it different? Or how is it that they've come to this conclusion, or what have you? Whack jobs aside, okay?
right.
Because I find that incredibly helpful. I found it incredibly helpful because at times it's allowed me to say, you know what, maybe the direction I was going in that, for whatever that topic was, wasn't really where I should be going. Maybe I should be going somewhere else. Just an idea. Just a thought.
Great idea. And I look for things more that are trying to help me nuance things that I don't really quite fully. Well, I'd either learn something that I don't quite fully understand, or nuance something that I do, but know I'm missing something when I'm saying what I'm saying. Like, and they could be simple, low grade questions, or they could be life turning questions. But it's, I mean, I'm on a particular quest at the moment, though. So I have to get there. And then to your point, I think that's a really great way to go about it.
And then it's
All right,
something
Brent?
that can be discussed as well. But anyway, totally different.
We're going to have you back. You can count on that. If you're
Lovely
willing
to
to come
see you.
back.
Lovely to see you guys. Lovely to talk to you, Steve. Ages since that's happened. You've lost a bit more hair, mate.
Oh, thanks for that too. Let's get back to that Obama thing offline.
okay. Well, Steve, do you have anything to pitch, like a show that you may be doing tomorrow or something?
Well, we got into a lot of trouble because you were steering this into notifications on the happy hour yesterday. So no, I have nothing to say about what might be happening on the weekend, probably Sunday. Okay, it's Sunday. The producer is telling me to grow up.
Okay, and on that cheery note, tell the producer we said hello.
Hey,
Yes,
producer.
we hope to be recording at 11 a.m. Pacific. You can see it on your local social graph channel.
And on behalf of the Venerable Steve Gillmor and the Venerable Dennis Howlett, well, the Venerable Paul Greenberg can handle his own goodbye.
Right.
I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Playaz, and we can't end the show without, if I can find the damn picture, Minnie. Bye, Minnie. See you
I
next
don't
week.
see her.
Why don't you ever see her?
I don't know.
She's
It's
there.
weird. You guys see her, right?
Yeah.
How
I
can
don't
you not
see-
see her? I don't
not see her.
Anyway, Minnie's there, and now we're
Hey,
out.
Ghost Minnie.